Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of Elite FTS for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it. Now, onto the show.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. What's going on, guys? This is Dave Tate, and this is episode 116 of the Table Talk podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by MarekHealth.com. They are hormone optimization and premier, I screwed that up, not premier, premium, preventative health network. One of these days I'll get this right as I keep going through here. Anyhow, they have different labs that are available for you for whatever services that you're looking for. If you just want your labs done and you know what you're looking for, that's one option you have. If you don't know what you're looking for but want to have your labs done, they will set you up with a provider that they have to be able to help you determine which labs to get done to optimize your hormone health or preventative health, as I said earlier, incorrectly. And then they'll walk you through the process. And then after you get the labs done, if things are off, they'll suggest certain supplements for you or write prescriptions for whatever that you need. So check them out at MarekHealth.com. Discount code TableTalk10 for your first order. With that being said, incorrectly for the 9th time, but sooner or later I will get this right. Our guests today are Adam Zevchik, Haley Hill, and Jaden Lacaria wasn't able to make it, so we will discuss that a little bit. But these are 3 of our new Elite FTS athlete sponsors. They've been training out here. So we're going to do a couple things today. We're going to talk about just the training session, what it's been like out here, what you guys are training for, what your background is. We'll talk a little bit about Jaden because he's not here, so we can say all kinds of fun stuff about him, in regards to that. And basically welcome them to the team. We will get together again after you guys know who they are and you get a little bit more of their background to be able to have them answer questions that you would have specifically for them. Today I'm going to be throwing questions at them. We're just going to talk bullshit like we do after we train anyhow. So it's not really any different than that. So I'll start with Adam. Give a little bit of your background, competitive history,
sure,
so forth.
All right, so background, I've been powerlifting competitively for the last 12 years. I've been training for the last 13, 14 years. Competitively, I've competed in majority of federations, even though Open Powerlifting doesn't say so, because it didn't start documenting me until 14, I think. Right now, I've got an AWPC world title, 3 WPC world titles, got several APF national championship titles. Competition-wise as well, I have the junior squat record of 148. I compete 132, 148, 65, and working my way up to 81. I have been competing pretty much primarily in the APF, WPC, and WPO for the last 7 years. I do bounce around a little bit. As far as training goes, I'm strictly a multiply lifter. For multiply powerlifting, I started out day 1 in multiply powerlifting in a gym, my first day in a gym, so I kind of got hooked there. In terms of coaching experience-wise, I've been a coach now for the last 6 years. Started out with Gerald Holdsworth at the Spot Athletics. I was there for 3 years. Did a lot of that. Kind of have shifted gears as I'm a golf course superintendent, but I do still coach on the side a little bit here and there when I have the opportunity to, especially out here as we bring kids out and get some of these young kids back underneath their belts.
Haley?
I've been competing for about 3.5 years now. Started off as a 123 competitor. I compete raw and wraps, not a geared lifter. Started off at 123, then eventually moved up to 132. Kind of sticking there for a while till I can make my move to 148. But I compete in WRPF and USPA. Those are the 2 big raw organizations. Have 3 junior all-time world records, working on the open ones. I just lost my track. Anyways, my best total is 12:01 at 132, and then I don't coach, not really there yet. Don't really feel confident in doing that, but getting ready to start prep for a meet in Vancouver, Washington, on September 3rd. I'm gonna go for some big numbers there.
All right, what I look for when, because people ask me all the time, what are you looking for with the athletes that you bring in and so forth. And one of the things that I look for with the athletes is, where they put the competing as far as priority in their life. And, for you guys, it's the top priority in your life. So with that comes, I hate to use the word sacrifice because you're not really doing the sacrificing for something that you love. It's, family members and other people that are supporting you. They're the ones that are actually kind of doing the sacrificing for you to be able to do that. But it brings a little bit different perspective to the sport compared to other people that don't put it as the same priority.
Yeah.
And interesting story that Adam's been out here for almost
a little over a year
now. I was doing an AMA, on Instagram, and this is when I was asking.
Yeah.
I was in the vetting process for the sponsors, and you fired something up saying, hey, when can I come out and train? And I'm like, well, this would be cool. I can have her come out and train, and this would be a lot easier way, to kind of vet if she's what we're looking for an athlete and all that. Then you said, can I bring Jaden out, which was odd because, I didn't know you guys were together for one thing, but the other thing was he's also on the list too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this is cool as hell. And what I try to do out here, and I talked about it a little bit on the last podcast, was I try to balance the people who are out here. So I want to have a number of people that place, and I've talked to you guys about it, that have training as one of the top priorities. But then I also want to have people, I don't want to say total beginners, but young beginners, young hungry beginners. They really want to learn training because that helps you guys get better. Because you're looking at like their feet, you're looking at it helps you become better at your own craft because you see it in others. And then you end up with these, I just kind of call them like the in-betweeners.
Yeah.
That are, I don't want to down talk them, but like spotters, loaders, and stuff like that. But,
sure.
They like powerlifting, and they like the power lifts, but they don't really aspire to become great at it. And so...
They're essential, though.
They are. They're essential. But what's the most essential is the balance between having the top. Because like I said in the last podcast, I don't know how Louis did it, where he just had like 20 of all people that it's the number one priority. Because I don't know how to do that because that's crazy. But if there's too many of the in-betweeners compared to the top people, it dilutes.
Yeah.
Because the goal is to keep you guys striving towards becoming the best power lifters you can, not having people trying to dilute you by saying, there's more to life than power. You don't need to know that because right now it's like, fuck that, powerlifting's my life, right? But the beginners come in. I also like the beginners, and it's funny when you think about it because with the high school kids, for instance.
Sure.
Think of how warped their perception of strength is.
Oh, yeah.
When they come in here.
Yeah, they think a 200 bench for a male is good.
Yeah,
and what are you doing? They're like, I can bench more than that. Yeah.
So their perception shifts. I came into the sport that way, where everybody was benching 400 pounds. I'm like, man, this, 225 sucks. Like, this is terrible. Where some places, some high school, that's like a huge
gym, bench. Yeah.
So when Haley came out with Jaden, we started talking. I'm like, do you know who these people are and all this other kind of stuff? Because that was the conversation. Like, where are they at really? Are they going to come in? Are they going to help? Are they going to dilute? what's it going to be? And you guys heard me say this a lot of times. Like a lot of the rules out there, it's like it's up to whoever the top lifters are. People want to know, how do I make it out? How do I come out and train? Well, if you're a top lifter, you want to come out and train. I'm going to be asking the other ones.
Yeah.
And if they're not in agreement, it ain't going to happen. It's just how that plays out.
Sure.
And kind of works that way. So it didn't take very long to where it was like, no, these guys are serious about what they're doing 100%.
Real quick.
And so brought them in. With that in mind, I want to dig a little bit more into some of your backgrounds to where you have a background in hockey. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I grew up playing hockey. Super young, taught myself I had two older sisters that were in and out of jail and drugs, and I knew sports was the way to go to stay out of that. So I got into that, and whenever it was time to get recruited for college, I didn't personally think I was like that good to like get a full ride, let alone like go D1, and ended up going D1 at Lindenwood. Played 3 years there before I got injured. It was just a concussion, but I mean, most hockey players, it's not when, it's if, or what concussion's going to put you out. And that kind of got me into powerlifting. Because I mean, I got hockey taken away from me, which was the one sport I was passionate about. And I was like, okay, well, shit, what do I do with my time? Like, what do I do with my life? And I was just going to the gym literally like 2-3 times a day, just like trying to not be depressed and not think about it. And then met someone at the time, and they're like, oh, are you a powerlifter? And I was like, no, like I'm just training. Got into my first meet, ended up winning my first meet, and was like, oh, okay, like I could actually be good at this. And then I just told myself, I was like, I know that this is what I want to do. I still want to be an athlete. And like for me, the beginning was almost more fun because you're learning the sport and like you're new again to like a new sport. And just I took everything super serious. Like I stopped partying, I stopped doing everything, and just focused on powerlifting. And then met probably some of the closest people in my life right now to lifting because of lifting.
So you took the discipline that you had in hockey,
Yeah.
basically, because you didn't know any different.
Yeah.
You're like, powerlifting, this is a sport.
Yeah.
You know, where some people will say it's a hobby, some people will say it's a sport, and all this
Yeah.
other stuff. You just, this is a sport, I have to treat it exactly the same way that I treat hockey.
Yeah.
Just go all in.
Yeah.
And from that, within a few years, you're able to move up.
Yeah, I mean, in high school, I played 4 sports, was hockey, lacrosse, softball, and then cross country. But when you go to college, ice hockey, you go preseason with the football boys, and then your season is the entire year all the way until finals. So I wasn't able to be a multiple sport athlete, and we were doing multiple practices a day. So like lifting 4 times a week was a huge difference from training 2 times a day and then going into the weight room.
Yes. So how did your perspective on training shift? Because with hockey, you were doing it to become better at hockey.
Yeah.
So then there's a huge pivot.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me was like on my off days, I was like, man, I feel like I'm getting weaker. Because like I went from being an athlete where you're either on the ice every single day or you're in the weight room every single day. And then for powerlifting, obviously it's all about recovery. So I'm like, oh, I'm only lifting 4 days a week. Like there's no way I'm going to get stronger. So like for me, like that was like the huge mental hurdle that I was like, okay, like if I actually want to be good, like I have to do like all this stuff. Like, okay, if we're training 4 days a week, I need to actually not train 4 days a week, not say I am, and then sneak off to the gym because I'm bored and I feel like I'm getting weak or I'm losing muscle. So it was just like, that was the biggest thing for me. And then when I got invited to the Kern, because I remember I started and I was like, oh, my dream is I want to do the U.S. Open. And like everyone around me, I remember, was like, "Oh, you're not going to make it. Like it's your first year powerlifter." And then I ended up getting invited. I mean, I definitely didn't like belong there. Like I got second in my weight class, which is good. Most people think it's good, but like I look at it like, why do the sport unless you're going to be the best? So then I went there and I was like, oh, there's actually like other females, because like I'm in an area where there's not like a lot of female competitors that take it serious. Like they go to the gym, but it's more just to like look good and not actually be strong. So the Kern was like a huge turning point, because I talked to other top athletes and like I realized my mind works very alike like theirs, and I was like, oh, I'm not just like a weirdo, like there's other people out there that think like that. And so that like brought me in to the powerlifting community around like the top lifters, and like being like, okay, now how do I get from like being average to the best? And then that's when I met Tom, my current coach.
Okay. Now you ended up somehow or another under Doug Heath for many years. So how did that end up happening?
So I started powerlifting when I was in high school, and I came up under a guy who was my Latin teacher at the time, and he was just giving me shit in the classroom. So I showed up one day, never left. Well, this guy is the guy that my Latin teacher is the one who introduced me to Doug. So 4 years removed down the road from when I started powerlifting, came back, played a year of college golf, came back to Columbus looking for a place to train, and he referred me and introduced me to Doug at a meet that I was doing down here. Met Doug at the meet, and we just clicked. The crew was right, the timing was right. One of those opportunities, and Doug, as you know, is a very unique character. And so we ended up just getting just the intensity that he brought to every training session, every rep. It's what drew me in. And the people that were there at the time when I walked in, it was just the right place at the right time. I was with Doug for a total of like 6, almost 7 years. Doug and I have got a ton of history, awesome guy. And if you don't know the history of the sport, which is something that I think really took me to that next level, because powerlifting was always huge coming up through high school. And then when I met Doug, that's where it kind of shifted gears, because then once I understood the history of the sport better and understood a lot of the numbers, the way the sport worked, the history, the names, the video. I mean, he's got footage that I got to watch and I'm privileged to watch of old meets from 70s, 80s, 90s, of some of the biggest names in powerlifting. And you're watching this and you're understanding how the sport unfolded over the series of time, and you get to see the chronology of how it evolved. And that's really what changed it for me. That was a big pivotal point, because not only did I realize, I could do this, and I had been doing it at that point. I was just starting to turn the corner. But then the mindset in the gym and how he approached the barbell, how he approached training, how he approached pretty much everything within that philosophy is what I really grasped onto, and then learned and took that upon myself and allowed to make my own modifications to what worked for me. And that's really where that shifted gears. Now, from like a disciplined mindset standpoint, I always came up an athlete, multi-sport athlete. We were playing baseball, golf, football, basketball, hockey. I played about every sport. Then once I got to high school, you stick with a couple that you're good at, which for me was baseball and golf, and I did ski club, snowboarded through in and out of season. And then when it really shifted gears is, like I said, when I came back, and it was like, okay, well, can't really play golf anymore, just playing club. Baseball was done, blew out the shoulder. That was the first series of the shoulders. I actually blew it out decline benching, so that was entertaining. And there goes baseball. And then I was like, all right, well, if we're going to do this, let's do this. And that's really where I shifted to go all in, and dropped everything else that I was doing, stopped playing anything competitive, and took that mindset of multi-sport athlete and put it into one thing. And that kind of shifted gears for me.
What's the craziest shit you've seen in the basement with Doug?
That's a tough question. Oh, man. I've seen a dude squat 1,003 in single ply with no knee wraps. That was nuts.
No, I'm not talking. I mean, I'm talking like the funny ass stuff.
Funny stuff?
Yeah, nobody,
Okay.
I don't want to say nobody cares about that.
The lifting
But
stuff? Well,
just the not lifting
all
shit.
right, so here's a couple good ones. This is good. There's times where...
Let's put it this way. There's like 3 stories we can just tell from today.
Oh, yeah.
That are stupid and
This
funny.
is true. So I think I'll start with this one. You got to understand the mentality, and it's where nothing else matters at all. It's very hard to explain. This dude's got replaced shoulder. He's got 2 reverse replacement hips. He's down in the basement. He's trying to bench 550 in an old canvas freaking shitty bench shirt. Well, the shirt doesn't fit him. So you know how we're going to make room to make it tighter? We're going to take knee wraps and wrap the shoulders all the way down, halfway down the bicep. So I'm the one who's wrapping the shoulders, getting it halfway down the bicep. We get in there. We have reverse bands now that we're hanging down. So he wants 550 on the bottom. So we get him in, and he takes this thing out, rolls it down. We get it halfway down. The band pops on the shirt, doesn't care, finishes the freaking press with a half reverse band. Just nuts. Bounces up off. Plates are going flying. Things are going off the chain. The mirror gets cracked. The bars are going sideways. It was a good time. Always entertaining. You got to watch out, because if whatever happens, don't make sure he doesn't miss the lift. That's rule number 1. No matter what. It doesn't matter if he makes it or not. He didn't miss the lift. It does not matter.
Well, that's just the power lifter mentality.
Yeah,
it's never you.
Oh, God, no. I mean, everything else's fault.
Give me the handoff.
The handoff. The bench was fucked up. It was too hot. You weren't hydrated. Your coach didn't refeed you right.
Oh, definitely.
Wrong bar.
It goes 1,000 ways. I think the other crazy one was when he was getting ready. If you've never seen him get ready for a lift, that is probably the most intense little thing you've ever seen. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. He starts getting wound up. Okay. And I see a lot of it actually in you when you start getting going. There's a similarity there. When you hit that, when you flip that switch, it's get the hell out of the way. And for him, it's the same thing. He'll sit there and he'll beat his head against the back wall for like 3 minutes solid until I'm pretty sure he's going to go to sleep and knock himself out.
I used to do shit like that until I realized it doesn't help.
For him, it does, though, because when he doesn't do it, it's not the same. When he gets to that level, it's a whole nother way. And the other thing I learned from him is learn how to fake it, though. Like, you'll know, not anybody else, but I know when he's faking it because he just can't get there. Not a good day, whatever, just can't quite get there. But he'll fake it and still make the lift. But it's not the same intensity, not the same I don't want to say exaggeration, but it is. It just gets a little bit wound up. When he's getting wound up, everybody knows it's about to get wild. And things go flying, head gets up against the wall, the bar's going sideways. He doesn't do anything in terms of what we would consider. He has his own way of lifting. It's extremely difficult to explain. There's no taking the bar out, letting it settle. Oh, hell no. Bar comes out on the rack, it's going straight down. I mean, they created a rule. It's the Doug Heath rule and every bench thing ever. That's why you have to hold it at the top and wait till your spotter leaves. Because they used to let you ride it all the way down.
Soft hand out.
Yeah, soft hand out, and then you get the press command. Well, that's literally why you have to hold it, is because they were getting pissed off because he was crushing all the bench records because he was having his handler hand the bar down like an inch off of his chest. They'd let go, step away, press, and then he'd freaking smoke the bench. So they said, screw it, and made, I call it the Doug Heath rule, where you have to hold it motionless at the top. You know, little things like that. And he still does a lot of that to this day. I mean, that's how I learned how to hand out. Soft it and let it sink. And there's a difference between letting it sink and then taking it 10 inch off your chest. But nonetheless, the concept still applies.
Yeah, the headbutt thing I used to do in high school before I'd bench, and I'd use the bathroom stalls because you can't knock yourself out headbutting in a bathroom stall.
It's true.
You can whack into that thing and it's loud and makes a lot of noise. So I would do that and I'd go in and break a PR bench every time.
Oh, yeah.
Then over time that led to headbutting the barbell. You know, so then I whack the barbell, then I get under the bar. Then after so many times, you know, you start to build up the calluses on your fucking forehead from that. And then you start, the knurling got
Sharper,
better,
aggressive,
sharper.
yeah.
Yep. So then it would start bleeding, right? So then I still to this, I fucking love thinking about it too. I'll tell you why I had to stop in a minute. But I would headbutt it, and then, you know, you got your head down before you take it out.
Sure.
I could feel fucking blood running down my face, and then as soon as I would see the drop hit the floor, it's like, oh, I'm fucking ready now. And then part of it was, there's no way I can miss at this point because I'm going to look like a complete fool.
Sure.
Right? So few things happen over a period of time. I got red lighted in one of the APF nationals because as I came out of the bottom, it spurred onto the head judge.
Oh yeah.
Right? And there was no rule for this
At the time.
right? So I got red lighted. And then so Louis raising all kinds of hell.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because there's no rule about this. There's no way he should have missed that lift, and he knew the rule book inside out and all this other kind of shit. Meanwhile, he's telling me, you're a fucking idiot. You shouldn't be doing this stuff. And so I mean, this is there was I fucked my pec up, and there was a meet in Zanesville, so I had to take a token bench, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna finally try to get a decent deadlift and a big squat. So Bob Youngs was there and his wife was there at the time, and I whacked my head so fucking hard on this one, you know, and I go down and halfway down, lights out. I mean, I knocked myself out is what I did, right?
Yep.
And then, you know, so after that I couldn't find, because it wouldn't stop bleeding, I couldn't find anything, so I just grabbed a wrist wrap or a knee wrap,
Sure.
and just tied it around my head to stop the bleeding.
Sure.
And then I go down and I sit down, you know, because now I'm not, you know, my bench is what, the bar and collars, whatever that stupid token bench was.
Yep.
So I'm sitting there just waiting, and I'm talking to Bob and his wife. And before I sat down, Bob's like, oh, by the way, this is the idiot that you were telling me about. So before this happened, I guess she was saying, who is this idiot that just went up there and did this and then missed the lift? And then I come up there like with a knee wrap tied around my head. Like, hey, nice to meet you. You know, and, you know, pulled a decent deadlift. But after that, Lou kind of was like, can you tell me exactly now how this helps?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I got to find a better way. But through training and stuff, Chuck used to do things similar to it, not as aggressive, but it would bleed. And so the beanie hat is kind of where that came from, because if he had the beanie hat on, then he would grind it. You know, he'd just put his head and just kind of like grind, but then it would end up bleeding. And you get red lighted. So hence, there comes the reason for the beanie hat that he became famously known for wearing. It was so he wouldn't get red lighted for, you know, bleeding on his squat. So you're new to this shit, right? So what kind of stupid shit have you seen just in the short period that you've been in the sport? There has to be something.
It's been more like at local meets.
Yes.
Where it's like when I first started, you have those guys who think they're super into the sport, and they're like really good, and they're just snorting Adderall before me. Yeah. Thinking like it's going to help, or anything that they're taking, they're just snorting just to like get that extra for. I mean, I haven't really seen a lot of stupid stuff. Before coming here, I kind of trained alone. Like, I had my 1 or 2 training partners, but most people just piss me off because they just want to talk and just socialize. And I'm like, no, I'm just here to train, so just get out of my way.
One of my first meets, I saw a dude get in a 3-point stance at the back of the platform. Swear to God, you got it. A 3-point football stance, right? And then, just basically scream, and then take 3 steps, and wham, had his head into the bar. I thought that was the coolest thing of all time. I'm like, man, I need to do that, but I can't do it with 405. It's got to be worthy of the cause, and stuff like that. So that's probably where it kind of started, with me with that, which is where it's, just fucking Sparky.
That's what I was thinking.
That's exactly where I was going to go. I guess we can go into this conversation of just like the mindset associated with powerlifting.
Sure.
And how that works, where there's definitely there's a training mindset, right? Then there's like the heavy work set mindset.
Yeah.
And I'll let you guys talk a little bit more about that. And then there's just the overall, mindset of the consistency. But we had a guy out here today. We've been working on this mindset for a while. I don't feel bad saying shit about him.
Not at all.
If he listens to it, he's going to totally agree. And, I've been giving him books to be able to read and all this stuff. And he's like, my mindset's definitely there today. It's definitely there today. It's definitely there
And then
today.
fucks up his squat.
He
literally fucks it up.
Literally just fucks his squat all up. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, well, first off, he's holding the bar in the middle of his back. I mean, there's so many things wrong with this. And I'm like, okay, how can I, trick his mind, And I'm like, well, here, take this, rub it here, rub it here, rub it here. This is going to, activate. And some of it will, right? But we all know that's not, it's not the cause, right? No. It's part of it, but not really. And then whack him in the back of the neck, and he could have put fucking another plate on the bar. He missed the bar.
That's what he said. He came up, he's like, Adam smacked the shit out of me.
That was what I did. I smacked him in the back of the neck.
I was like, yeah. He's like, it woke me the fuck up.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
So you're going to be one of these guys now that's going to be like, smack me, man.
Oh, yeah.
Smack me, man. It's not the point.
It'll be 135.
He's going to need So the next conversation is going to be, you're the same person.
Yeah.
On both of those reps. But for you guys, when you're training, obviously there's the training mindset, like the warm-up sets, the regular sets. And then talk a little bit about how you both approach that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you go.
I probably approach it way different than most lifters. I've realized that, I'm not an aggressive lifter. If I, get super aggressive or, super angry or have people even, try to help me up, it more just, I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Get out of here. So, for me, I mean, it took a lot to, mentally be able to, amp myself up or, mentally be able to, get in the zone. I was one of those lifters when I started where I was, mentally fucking myself a lot. But, when I figured out, it's just weight. The worst thing that's going to happen is you fail a rep. That's when things change for me. So, for me, I mean, I have, right now I'm in off season. So, I'm not going to get, I get in the zone, but I'm not going to get super in the zone where it's, prep, where, okay, don't talk to me. I just need to get here. I need to do what I need to do. But, I still come in and there's still work to do. Mm-hmm. I can't just come in and be like, oh, I'm going to forget all my cues or I'm going to just, think about shit that's going on outside. So, for me, I more just, put my headphones on, just kind of, listen to music that gets me going and, gets me to, want to dance. And, that's how I get in the zone. I mean, you guys have seen it. Probably way different than the average.
No, that's you. That's you, though. And it's not different than the average because a lot of lifters are like that.
Yeah.
Where the mistake a lot of people will make is they'll think that you're not lifting to your potential because you're not there.
Yeah.
And it's, I got one guy out here that thinks everybody needs to lift at that crazy ass potential. Yeah. It's like, no, man, you do that, it's going to fuck her all up.
Yeah, it just makes me screw up my cues.
Exactly. And that's the thing with you is you're extremely coachable.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're doing a lift and we cue something and and we know what the cue is. Yeah. You know what the cue is. You immediately do it.
Yeah.
Those are the things that you see with professional athletes, and that's why you did so well in hockey and did well in hockey. That's where that comes from. So what happens if you take that person, you put them in this alternative mindset. Now you're not thinking your cues. Yeah. You're not able to adjust when things start to go wrong. Because for you, when you start to feel something start to go wrong, you're telling yourself what to do to fix it.
Yeah.
Where other people are just going to muscle fuck through it, right? When you have that ability to think yourself through it, there's ways to train people to be able to help do that. You don't disrupt it.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of coaches will screw that up. So, and it will change a little bit as prep comes. But as prep comes, your mindset's going to be more just controlling the stress of the prep, because doubt comes.
When prep comes, everything gets cut out. It's literally work, gym, recovery. That's it. I don't care to hang out with friends. I don't care to go to the movies, go whatever. And that's just me. When I'm in my 8-week prep, nothing else matters besides that. And I think that's the sacrifice, and it's really hard for my family to get that, just because they're not athletes and they don't understand the passion I have behind lifting. And it was the same way with hockey, which it makes me more appreciative of the people who are in my corner, who actually understand the lifestyle and who want to see you succeed, whether that's my coach or Jaden or you guys. It's just, it makes things different when you're actually surrounded by people who have the same mindset as you, where it's okay, we're coming in, we're gonna train, and that's what it's about. I don't care if you and your wife were doing X, Y, or Z yesterday. I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear about you're probably gonna squat 900 pounds to make it look easy.
Yeah, and that's why when I was talking about having that balance, that's what's important.
Yeah,
right? Because especially with you're 2 weeks out of starting your prep. Right?
Yeah.
So your uncertainty's already starting to kick in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I'm getting jittery about it.
I know. I've seen it. We've had these conversations. It's okay, let's get back on track, because that's just what happens when it's that important.
Yeah.
When it's that high priority. Then you're around other people that understand it. You're around people that don't understand it. They're going to be like, well, what are you doing this for?
Yeah, why you eat chicken and rice for every meal?
Yeah, and as it gets closer and closer and closer, it's going to be the only thing you want to talk about.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody's got to listen to be, for that to be able to get better. And you're the same. You're 2 weeks out or 3 weeks out.
2 weeks out right now,
Yeah.
so I'm in that same boat. So it's kind of been, meet prep for me is a little different. It's evolved over the years, and I've kind of figured out what works best for me. But definitely staying toned in. It's the other people that sacrifice, because you don't do anything. I work, I sleep, I recover, come home, train. That's just what it is. There's nothing more to it than that. And it's hard because people want you to go out. They want you to go to birthday parties. They want you to go sit at the bar. They want you to go do this, that, and the other. Come to this event, that event. No, I'm chilling. I got stuff to do. And by stuff to do, I mean sit at the house and do recovery work, hitting in any extra reps, digging in with a lacrosse ball, hitting stem, whatever I need to do to feel better so I can get better for the next training session. That's the mindset. Because when you get into a meet prep, everything matters. You might not think it's going to matter. Everything matters is when you get in, because especially in powerlifting, you kind of talked about in a previous podcast a little bit the difference between powerlifting and bodybuilding in terms of a training session, right? When you get into a meet prep, every rep matters. How those reps not only feel, look, then it's also the toll that it's taking on your body with those reps. Because then you get into the game, what I call gaming, where you're picking the jumps and getting the right jumps in order to hit the weights right and have enough energy left in the tank and then still be able to recover. And then you get into the percentage games. That all matters. And what you're doing outside the gym dictates what those reps look like, especially in a meet prep. So when it comes to hanging out with other people and everything like that, your friends do take a hit, and I've lost a lot of friends because of it. Like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I haven't taken time off. I think I've competed twice a year, every single year for the last 12 years. And that's not something that's going to change. And for me, it's at least 2 times a year, and I stay in meet prep. And then when I'm not in meet prep, I'll go out and go do a couple things, go to some ball games, go do some other stuff. But when I'm in meet prep, that's all that matters. And if I do go out, the biggest thing I think I've done in meet prep is go out to dinner. Okay, that's something that I'll do is I'll go out to dinner. Okay, fine. But that's about it. And if you go out to dinner, it's not I'm sitting there slamming beers. I may have a drink, max a drink. I'm not talking about just chugging nothing but water. Yeah, I'll still, no bullshit. I'll have a drink. I'm a bourbon guy, so I'll sit down and have one bourbon on the rocks, clean as hell, boom, done. But with that one bourbon, what you're not hearing is everything I did prior to that, making sure I drank a Gatorade, if not 2, and then afterwards drinking water and then another Gatorade, and then getting up the next morning and sodium loading because I know I'm going to need some extra sodium so I don't blow something off in the session the next day or the day after that. That's the difference. And the other big thing with mindset, to take this a step further and go inside the gym, when you're talking about warm-up sets, warm-up sets, it's no different. It's feeling out you and your body and how you feel for the day. You talk about this when you're warming up. You start on the box and you work your way through. You see what's tight. You go loosen it up, keep going. It's the same thing. For me, it's the exact same thing. I start out with stretching. I do static. It's, slow to fast, static to dynamic, right? I live by that. That's something I picked up, honestly, not too long ago, and it's made a huge difference in warm-ups and how to feel. Then I start gauging things as I go through the bar. Yeah, I take forever in between sets and reps, but a lot of it is me going through a mental analysis of how that rep felt over and over and over again in my head. I might be having a conversation with somebody, which I'm probably not paying attention to be all honest, because I'm going through in my head, how did that feel? What was tight? What was loose? Is this going to be conducive to me making that next attempt? And I'm rolling through, and then in between lifts, I'm walking around or I'm moving something or I'm stretching, trying to find something to get that next spot more comfortable. So, for example, today, I just got doing my last heavy squat. I worked all the way up, did a reverse band squat, and hit something going into this meet. So I'm working my way through even today, and it's like, all right, bar, so-so, hips felt tight. Let's go do a little stretching, cool. Then roll through, took a plate, and like, still not quite there yet. So then I rolled out and stretched again. And then we worked up to, then I was like, all right, let's only go, usually I'd make plate jumps. I'm like, let's throw a quarter on. Let's change the jumps today. Why am I changing the jumps today when I'm getting ready to go, this is the last workout? Well, because I was trying to work up to a number. So changing the jumps may have not been the most optimal decision, but it worked out for me because the long game, gaming, it worked out right because it was all about the number of reps that I was going to have to take to hit that top number. By making that quarter jump, I reduced the top end set reps by 2 reps, which allowed me to still get to the same number I wanted to without having to take 2 extra sets. So I dropped 2 sets, decreased the volume, increased the intensity and the weight, and I was able to make bigger jumps all the way up. I just separated it by 50-pound jumps. So every single set was 50 pounds more than I normally would take. However, I still ended up with the right number at the top end set without having to make 3 or 4 attempts above 90%. I only had to make essentially 2.
Yeah. Well, two points on that is that's what I try to teach all you guys, is how to auto-regulate everything with your training, because you can get a paper or program and it's only going to take you so far.
Sure.
You got to be able to develop that skill. The other thing with what you guys were talking about is I had the same shit when I was competing with people and, friends and stuff like that. And it drives you nuts after a while.
Oh, yeah.
So I started asking them back, I'd say, so we're friends, right? They'd say, yeah. I said, how would you feel? Would you feel the same way and be saying the same things if I was making $100,000 a week doing this?
Nope.
And then they would like sit there and look at me and say, so what you're telling me is money is more important than me obtaining my objectives that I'm trying to work for.
Sure.
So again, are we friends? So I flip it back,
Yeah.
right? Because I often wonder, do NFL players go through this? Do NHL players go through this? I'm sure they do to a degree.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's way less. Why is it way less? Because of money, right? So then you got to really start to think about who's the person that's on the other side of the table here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because do they really value what you're working for?
Right.
Because
Oh, yeah.
and I understand their argument. Well, there's no money in it or whatever it is. But the money is not important to you.
No.
Because you're not doing it for the money.
No.
So see, it falls back on,
Yeah.
that's kind of, it's kind of fucked up. But that, usually after I would say that, I would probably lose the friend. I mean, part of that. But at least they understood, or they never brought it up again.
Yeah.
Which helped as well. You're fortunate because you live with Jaden.
Yeah, we live
Right.
very
So-
similar lifestyles and mindsets. So it
Since
makes it
he's not,
easy.
since he's not here, give us a brief background on on him, right? Well, here's the thing: is he's sponsored as a bodybuilder,
Yeah.
right? So that's why we brought him in. So I'll let him tell his own story and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But the reason he's not here is he tore both quads. He
Yep.
did that how long ago now?
14 weeks
Yeah.
was the original.
14 weeks.
Yeah, it was for the Ghost Clash meet in this past February in Miami. He was taking his last squat, which was 805 in sleeves at 198, which would have been the all-time world record. Ended up blowing both quads off, both tendons off, and then the right leg, he blew his quad off as well. And just been going through different surgeries to get an infection out, so that's why he's 9.
Yeah, so it's just
Yeah.
it's the aftermath of that, which
Yeah.
we'll be able to let him tell his own story. It's unfortunate, but at least this is
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to be, from what we're hearing
Yeah.
right now,
Yeah.
as bad. But how did it change the dynamic for his training and your training when you guys moved in with each other?
So that was like a huge thing for me, and I like made it very clear. I was like, if we can't train together, we cannot be together. And I think most people would take that as like, what the fuck did you just say? And it like was hard for me because like I'm a very blunt person. Like I'm just gonna tell someone how it is, like whether it's gonna hurt your feelings or not, like because I would want the same thing.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, look, like we can train together, but the first time we train together, I'm gonna let you know it's like it's either a go or like you're never gonna talk to me again. And he's like, what? And I was like, I mean, how can you be with someone when your entire life is around a sport? And maybe some people can. I just know I cannot. I've gone through it. But we ended up training like. I know I can just look at him and be like, hey, like I just give him a look and he's like, okay, I know what kind of zone she needs to be in. So it actually helped like being more accountable, like for me, because like in off season I still eat very healthy, but obviously you can get away from like your midnight cravings or whatever. And so like for me that was like the biggest thing is I'd be like, hey, I'm like craving some Taco Bell.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go get Taco Bell? And he's like, no, we cannot do that. Like we already had a cheat meal. And like the gym, like once I realized, hey, like we're both serious. Like we're not just going to like fuck off during training. Like that made it super easy. And it's like, it's nice now having someone where like I go home and I just watch my videos and I'm like, why'd this feel off? Or like, why isn't my bench progressing as much? So it's like, it's almost nice because you're like always have someone to talk to about the sport. And like even though he's bodybuilding, like he still has more of a background in powerlifting than I do. I mean, he started lifting serious at 13, and then was training at Westside. I know you guys talked about that, so like that kind of gave him the in for powerlifting. But I know he's more passionate about bodybuilding.
I think having the relation with people from two different backgrounds also helps.
Yeah.
There's two different dramas and two different sports.
Yeah.
Right? So you can bring up whatever drama's going on. And
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's stupid.
Yeah,
You know,
literally.
and vice versa from that.
Yeah. Sure.
Where, he's going to keep your diet more in check.
Yeah.
Without it, you would be going to Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Which may not be a bad thing for most people. But,
Yeah.
you got weight class issues as you're trying to stay within, muscle you're trying to put on.
Yeah.
Things like that. And at the same time, some of it may actually rub off on him a little negatively because
Yeah.
he likes to do real heavy triples and shit
Yeah.
that I'm trying to slowly move him away from. So hopefully he is going to listen to this. But so
Maybe he needs
yeah,
to.
Yeah, maybe he needs to, because that's not the end goal.
Yeah, end goal is to get back on stage. And
Yeah, but
be
you
pro.
guys still love what you're doing
Yeah.
too. So bodybuilding can be so monotonous with the training
Yeah.
over a while. So there's that there as well. So going back to when you first came out, I think it might have even been still during COVID, right?
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah. So it's, I've always had a small crew that was here, and during COVID, there was basically no crew.
Yeah.
And that was my decision. Let's get them out of here because there's a lot of drama, a lot of other stuff like that. And it was just me, Joe, Todd, and Ted.
Yep.
So, I mean, God, how long? Todd and Joe I've been training with since probably 1990.
Yeah.
So there's a long history with that. So they're more friends than they are training partners, but it's still the same thing. And then Ted was here for a long time. And then we were talking at the time, because I'm like, for a while I was like, thank God there's fucking nobody coming in here. Let me come in when we want. Leeway, we don't have to. Then after a while I was like, this kind of sucks. I love working with top, you guys. It's top, and I put it out there in the last podcast. No, I don't do your training. I don't do all that other stuff. I help you auto-regulate your own training.
Yeah.
That's to me, that's the key principle to go from where you guys are to great.
Sure.
Is that, and that's the missing component for all the other things. And I love trying to find those things. Like how's this mental aspect? Where's this? And that's just my passion and what I like with that. And like, okay, how do we build this back? How do I find that? Then I remember you messaged me few years ago, a couple years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So then I sent a text to JL and I said, hey, look, man, I'm thinking of sending him a text. What do you think? So, he's a great guy, whatever. And I'm talking to those guys. And Ted was moving at the time. And they're like, well, we need like a Ted. And I'm like, well, no, this is not going to be a Ted. It's going to be somebody that, is going to be, we got to get this guy back.
Yeah.
Because this is shortly after the shoulder surgery too.
Yep.
Like this is a longer process. This isn't like a one meet to a one meet. This is like we got to, and that might have been different for you too, the first conversation, because it's like you wanted to train for this meet, and I'm like, no, we're talking 3 meets away from now.
Yeah.
And then we'll work back from there. So more of a long-term process. And then after you came back, and then we started to get employees and staff and stuff like that, I started to see that imbalance. Like, okay, now we got to figure out how to bring in more to be able to get that balance, because I can't have you,
I'm trying to push for a meet.
become normal, right? It's where I'm definitely not normal, right? But I'm still not in that competitive state like I used to be.
Sure.
I'm not sacrificing all those other things that you were doing. And then that kind of where that came from. So when you first came out and say we had that discussion, what did you think about that? Because it wasn't normally what a lifter is going to expect.
No. So at first I had to kind of step back, and it took me a second, but I'm like, okay, we're just going to have to look a little further down the road. But at the time, like, it was weird because, like you said, I'm 4 months removed from shoulder surgery. Things did not go well. I think that same week that I came out here, I was finishing up all the final testing for cardiac and neurology that same week when I came out. And for those who don't know, I had a whole episode with shoulder surgery where I died on the table and they didn't know what happened, and it was the whole thing. So I came out here that same week as they're finally finishing up all the testing, like freaking 3-4 months later. And what's going through my head is, at that point in time, I also lost some memory. So I'm like starting to kind of be able to trigger things back. I'm pulling things together. I'm sitting here and just listening to what you're telling me. And I was actually kind of okay with it for a second, because I'm like, all right, I know this is going to take some time to come back. It already kind of feels like we're starting to get there a little bit. I couldn't get under a straight bar yet. We used safety squat bar and Mars bar and everything like that for a long time. Cambered bar, the spider bar. And in my head, it's like, okay, well, we're just going to have to play this long game, because right now, coming back off of this, I wasn't ready. I was transitioning. At the time, I was in a job, still am in a job, where it's physically demanding, so you also have to play that into a factor. And I knew that I had just come out of a sling a couple weeks prior, and I wasn't quite totally ready to even, as much as I wanted to push for a meet, I needed somebody at that time to tell me to slow the heck down, because I would have ended up blowing it out again or blowing out the other side. And that was definitely the right call. And I've never looked at things from like a 3-year objective. I've done like the annual plan, the 1 year, but I think looking at things from more of like a 3-year objective is much more realistic, and it helped me change my perspective on what I wanted to do 3 years from then, which right now we're sitting 14 months post that conversation. Yeah. And I'm sitting here like, no, this is pretty much right where I needed to be in line. I mean, we're approaching right now, as I sit 2 weeks out from a meet, we're approaching being back. I knew it was going to take a while to where I was previous pre-surgery. So we're finally approaching those numbers again. And it's like, all right, now we're getting right back into where we need to be. And I'm much more stable, and I'm way better off as an athlete than I was when I hit those numbers. I can definitely feel that. Like today we went up over 8 and I'm not shaking. Like that never happens. Usually I break 7 and I start shaking. I was like, oh hell, because I had an instability. Typically what I found was hips and quads. And so once we kind of fixed a couple of those things, it took us a long time. But those little things, I feel like now, the easiest way for me to put it is the threshold is so much higher. We haven't even come close to tapping where I think that threshold is. Like not even close.
No, because the plan was set out basically for
Yes.
Worlds in November. I mean,
Right.
then we'll have to figure out plan from there. But stick to basically, I don't want to say when people hear plan, they think like all the sets and the reps and all that. It's like, no, this is just a template that's been laid out.
Sure.
Like, here's where you are, here's where you want to be.
Right.
And this was the conversation. Like, realistically, honestly, how many meets do you think this is going to take?
Yeah.
Right? Assuming that none of them fuck up.
Yeah, you don't get injured, don't have shitty
Well,
meets.
you just have shitty meets,
Yeah.
too. It's like, okay, where's this at?
You
Then
miss a peak, anything can happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And then you realize, oh, shit, yeah, this is You know, because at first the normal mindset is, okay, my shoulder was fucked up. There's no reason why I can't get this working and break a PR squat while my bench suffers.
Yeah.
That's the mindset,
Oh, it is.
right? And it is. And then it ends up being this spiral decline, you know, that you see over years and years and years. It's like, no. Let's worry about, like, how can you get, like, an all-time world record, which a lot of times people just give up on.
Oh, yeah.
You know, especially when they start getting hurt. And they're like, like, well, yeah, how's that going to happen? You know, or total.
Yeah.
You know, because total is really the most important.
By far.
The most important factor. When you have to stop focusing on the total and start focusing on individual lifts, you're on your decline.
Yeah, that's a whole.
And you don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
As long as people know that, you know, you're on your way out. It's just a matter at that point when you decide to make that decision for that, because there is no bench dead specialist.
No, and that was a big change for me. It was, though, because I had to start looking at this longer plan, because to that point, and one of the things I took away from Doug, and I still use this mentality, he taught me how to game in meets, so you're picking numbers and picking jumps to beat somebody else, right? So you're not always taking your best numbers. You're doing what you have to do to win.
Yeah.
And you have to set yourself up. You have to be looking high, you know, forward at your bench, at the deadlift, as you're picking your squat attempts, and how to game. That was the mentality that I took to training, though, and that was where I think my problem was a little bit. That is absolutely, he can game like nobody I've ever seen in a meet. I mean, that's why he kept winning and winning and winning. Yeah, I took that philosophy out of meet. It was always about just finding ways to win, finding ways to get best lifter. How do you play the coefficient? Do whatever you have to do to win. But when you come out of it and you take a step back and you look at things from like at that point in time, which was basically like a year and a half, an 18-month plan, rolling into this world that's coming up here in whatever, 6 months, 5-6 months. It allowed me to change my perspective, because it's not, you're still gaming, but you're gaming on a much grander scale, and it's a little bit different, and it expands the focus. So you don't have to when I say that, you can shift gears several times and go through these different blocks, through your different phases, and as they are all still important and compound on each other, you're not going to be looking for those tiny little nuancey things. You're fixing those glaring obvious things, and then basically that's what we did for the first year, and then came back through now, and now we get to have fun and start fixing the nuancey things and start finding ways that we can peak more efficiently and peak better and change. You know, like we took the Circumax out this time, because the Circumax through last year, as awesome as it may have worked for me in the past, it tore the living heck up out of the one shoulder that I have left.
Well, in full transparency, that's why I took you through it, to show you that it isn't going to help like you thought it was going to.
Yeah.
Right? Because that would have always been in your mind.
It would have. The what if would have been 100%.
Yeah.
And that's how I operate. I mean, if I live by the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, I mean, to keep on rolling through. And in this sense, it was broke. I mean, as much as it does work for the squat, it absolutely diminishes the bench and the deadlift. It's too severe to be worth justifying.
But is your squat not better now than it was then?
Oh, yeah, by far.
Just saying.
Oh, yeah. The squat went up even more. So that's where it's like, okay, cool. So now not that we need to tweak anything, but where can we go forward? How can we continue to keep progressing this forward? I mean, my big thing with the squat is just, that's my favorite lift. That's what I love to do. I absolutely hate benching to a 10th degree. I love squatting, and I think the biggest thing with that is, yeah, that's where I really think I can make up a good chunk of my total. If we can pick up the deadlift a little bit, throw a couple on the bench, we'll be good to roll. And I mean, we're getting close. We're hunting. Like right now, I think total-wise, it's at number 22 all-time at 65. Yeah, of course, I'd like to get inside the top 20 at 65. I still feel like I got some meat left on the bone there at that weight class. And then, you know, at 81, the sky's the limit. I mean, if I fill out, put some weight on like I've been supposed to, been trying to.
Keyword fill out.
Yeah. I haven't told you this, but there was, when your name first popped up, when we were vetting for sponsors, so somebody put it out there, then I went and looked at your profile. I don't know what current it was, but it was the first current after you tore a bicep.
Yeah.
And it was live streamed.
It was the current. I was with a coach at the time, and I partially tore my bicep, and I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. Like, trip out to Cali, super expensive. Like, it's not worth it if I'm going to put up a shit total. Someone paid for my trip, and I was like, well, it's paid for, so might as well go out.
And like, you put up a good total.
Yeah, and I after I partially tore it, it didn't hurt to bench, and didn't hurt to squat, so I just stopped deadlifting because I couldn't pull literally anything over 275, which, like, is not good at that level. So I just stopped and I was like, whatever happens, happens. Like, it's either going to tear more or it's not going to tear at all. And squats went decent. Bench went decent. And then I remember warming up for deadlifts and I was like, I don't know. I'm about to pull something out of my ass, that's for sure. Like, you just, like, you know when it's a good day. And then my opener deadlift, I tore my hand completely open. I was like, well, how the hell am I going to pull anything now? And I remember Dan Bell looked at me and was like, are you going to be a pussy? I was like, well, I can't be a pussy now. So I just, like, put a bunch of chalk in there and just ended up pulling. It was like a 45-pound PR.
Yeah. This is what I told you. That impressed the shit out of me because I was watching the live stream.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who the fuck is this girl?
Yeah, and I went out to Cali alone. I was just like, whatever.
So that impresses me. But just watching it, it's like you hear she's got a partially torn bicep. They're talking about it during the live stream. And then she's pulling, and it's like, you know literally she could tear her bicep on any pull.
Yeah.
And then it kept another tap. Fucking PR, and I'm like, what? Holy fuck, this is impressive, right? And then so when I saw it and I went and looked, I'm like, that's that girl that fucking, you don't see that a lot, and now I know where that comes from. It comes back through that hockey background and all the other stuff, which is part of that mindset from there. But it was fucking impressive. It was impressive enough for me to say, okay, we're gonna figure this out, and that's why you got sent that other application.
I think it comes from, like, I've always been a sore loser with sports. Like, I've always been like, well, why are you going to play a sport if you don't want to be the very best? Which is definitely not everyone's mindset. And, like, so growing up, I was, like, that way, too. Like, my parents knew, like, even if I had a good game and our team lost, it was like, don't talk to Haley for the rest of the night because she's just going to be mad just because, like, the team lost. And, I mean, it got me to college and then got me here. So, but I think it's hard to, like, actually find someone who is like that these days, where, like, they're truly passionate, they want to be the best, and, like, they're going to do the extra work to get in there.
No, it is. Especially in
today's world.
Today's world, yes.
And I'll take it one step further. It's not just about winning. I mean, even there's a lot of times, I know, I got a feeling you're going to feel the same way when I say this. There's a lot of games that I won for baseball, we won in baseball, or terms we won in golf, but if I didn't play my best, I'm still pissed off.
Yeah, it's still a loss in the book.
Definitely. And there's always room to get better. I'm one of those people who it's definitely, I guess, a strength and yet a weakness, depending on what perspective you're looking at in life. I'm never satisfied with whatever I've done. That's not good enough. There's always room to get better, and it's always about finding ways to get better, which is why I love multiply, because there's 5 million variables, and I can keep manipulating different variables to find ways to get better. It's never good enough. I'm one of those people who's just, you get done with the meet, you won, great, celebrate that night, cool, then guess what? The next
back to work.
You're right back to work. Yeah. There's always room to continuing getting better. Now, there becomes a threshold where you do have to take some time off, and I'm very self-aware of this because I've burnt myself out a couple of times. But taking time off isn't taking a year off, 6 months off. If you want to stay competitive, you're talking about taking a week, maybe 2, and just what I call detoxing from the sport for a second and giving yourself a reset, and then you're right back at it. Whether it's changing how you're training, you go to more hypertrophy-based training, going to some more volume, throwing some GPP, you're doing something still in order to stay active, in order to keep blood moving, in order to keep tissues nice and full, and doing whatever you can to at least set yourself up for when you're getting ready to go to that next block. Because for me, it's always about looking forward, and I don't look back. Something happens, whatever happened last meet, I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah.
You learn from those mistakes. It's important to do that. But once you debrief from that meet, you got to just put it behind you and go forward. Take the lessons, cut your losses, figure out where you could improve upon, and keep moving forward. Because if you keep dwelling on what happened last meet or the meet before, or this, that, and the other, it's not going to work. Now, as much as I think you need to learn from those things, just like you need to learn from the history of the sport and how things developed and came over time, I think that's crucial. But you have to learn how to utilize that to get yourself to move forward, not just sit there and dwell and say, okay, this was cool, this happened, this, that, the other. Okay, this was great. I did great. This is the best thing I'll ever do. No. You always have to have that mindset of keep moving forward. And I guess for you, like, in your stance, you just keep changing the game in order to, for your lifting is what I've seen. You just keep changing the game so you can still always get better.
Oh, I can't. I don't want to say can't, right? I don't understand just training for health.
That's it. Yeah.
I mean, I have to have some purpose to train for. If it's some stupid reverse spider bar or whatever it's going to be, there's got to be something in there. And it always has to be big enough that I have to think, okay, once that's done, like now it's done, right?
Yep.
Okay, now I got to chill the body out. I got to let it recover, kind of like what you're talking about. And then I'm going to have to start rebuilding, the base, the height. Same thing that a power lifter does, because that's just all part of the process to be able to figure out and attack what's next. What the mindset that both you guys are talking about is, I was probably 10, 12 years in the sport when I graduated college, and that's when Louis, Chuck and Louis would call. They wanted me to move to Columbus for that, and it was right at that time I tore my pec and had to have it reattached, which was the first real major injury that I ever had outside of like a hamstring, little stupid things you get here and there. And for me, it was my total was stagnant for 3 or 4 years. And I had professors telling me, you've hit your genetic ceiling, whatever the fuck that meant. But they're professors, so it's like, okay, I kind of get what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But not really. But then after like 3 years of the same total, like, fuck, is this really it? And it's like, well, when I graduate, then that happened. I'm like, man, I'm probably, done. And then after talking to Louie and sitting down and, them calling several times, I made this decision that if I do this and if I come back, because if I left at that time, I would have always wondered.
Yeah, what if?
What if I would? And for me, those two words, what if,
Biggest regret ever.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't live with that. I'm like, okay, now if I do this, I'm not going to leave with any what ifs.
Yeah.
Not at all. So it changed. My perspective was always serious, but it was always, kind of like when I'm moving, like here's with the 3-year plan, here's this. It changed. Here's one bonus year. Here's another bonus year. And a lot of that was also reckless, right?
Well, sure.
But it was all bonus years because I didn't want to ask and leave and say, what if? I don't. I have nothing that I can say, well, what if I would have? Now, there are things I know now that I didn't know then, that if I would have applied then, I think I could have been better.
Sure.
But I can't say what if I would have applied something I had no idea about, and I was in constant process of learning, seeing other people and seeking education and being around other. It wasn't like I wasn't trying to find those things.
Right.
They just evolve over a period of time. Some of the things weren't there before. Different type of bracing type things would have probably eliminated some of the shaking, all those different things. But fuck, I didn't know. It wasn't like I wasn't training my core. I was doing everything that I knew how to do.
Sure.
But that's the best advice I have for anybody that's in that spot, that they're trying to be the best, is you just can't go out thinking what if.
Yeah.
Which means all like you said, everything matters. That all matters because it can all get taken away in a day.
Yep.
It's unfortunately that's just a reality of life too. But so you don't have that time. You see what I'm saying, to make those excuses and stuff like that. Now what you were talking about with those breaks, that's not really a break. It's recovery.
It is.
Because there's mental, physical, and technical aspects to all this shit. They all need recovery. If you keep blasting, then you're not doing yourself or anybody else any favors. And to me, it actually tells me that you're less serious than what you think you are.
Yeah.
Because if you're really serious, you would do the things that are going to put you in the best position for success. And everybody will tell you that doesn't ever put them in the best position. But they will say, I just have to do it. I'm like, so you just don't want to be great.
You're just mentally weak.
Exactly.
Right? It's a weird dynamic that goes through there because they think they're serious, but in all reality, they're
It happens
not.
all the time.
Well, it's amazing how many people you run into like that, and just you think they're serious, and then you start sitting down and asking them questions for a second, and it's like, it's quite the opposite actually. It's been quite entertaining. Like I'll bring it back to the mentality thing for a second. You'll find the guys you've got to get. Everybody's got their own thing, right? So your knack is just staying chill, and that I think is great. You catch your own zone and go. But I think the one thing we all do, and every good lifter, great lifter that I've seen be able to do, is when they get a hold of that bar. For me, it's not get a hold of it. For me, it's get under the bar. You flip that switch.
Yeah.
And I can see it in your eyes. I see it in your eye. Anybody who's done it, you go to that different place. You call it the void. For you, it's a little bit different. that's what I think separates it, is being able to have that mental strength, that mental capacity to be able to go there. Because what's really entertaining is I've been training people. There's a lot of people who don't have that switch. They have no idea how to get there, no idea how to focus on something that intently, or to be able to take themselves to that next place to push through whatever that might be, that feeling of pain, pressure, etc., and being able to still be able to technically be in control. Because I've seen people, without training, like through training people, they'll go to that place at full Blake mode, but their technique will go straight to hell because then they can't think or process.
Or they don't know how to come out of it, or they go into it in your warm-up set, and you're like, why are you getting in that zone? You're just wasting it for your top set.
And so he calls them zippy cards. You've only got so many of those in a session.
Yep.
And like for me, it's always my second to last set is typically going to look the shittiest, or the last two, because it's getting heavy and I haven't quite put myself into that zone yet.
Yeah.
And then when I flip that, you can't. You have to save it.
Yes.
Because that's why, for me, like today, the last set looked the best out of any of the sets I did all day, because you just flip that switch and go. But I know I've only got one of those.
Yeah.
Once I use that set, that's done.
That's part of the reason I think that you're so shot after a meet.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're playing like 6 of them.
Yeah.
Even your opener's got to still kind of be there.
Oh, yeah. A little bit.
There's a little bit, but you can't completely hold back. So we'll say that's half a card.
Sure.
Yeah.
The second and third has got to be there, man. So then afterwards, like, fuck.
Yeah.
You're just shot.
You're smoked. I mean, the mental fortitude, the mental, whatever you want to call it, the toll that takes. I mean, physically it drains you. I don't know about you guys. I usually get sick as all heck after a meet anyway, just because I'm so broken down, so absolutely
cutting away and all that.
Cutting away and reloading. I've never not cut for a meet, so this will be interesting. And like that's a whole different mindset game for me too, which another topic for another day, the cutting weight thing. But like to be able to get there, like you said, like 6 times in a meet, it's so exhausting. They call it brain fog, whatever you want to call it. Once I get into squats and I'm through squats, nothing that I'm going to say is going to make much sense, because all I'm focused on is getting through the bench and the deadlift at that point in time. And after that, it's like brain dead. There's nothing left.
You're just rambling just to talk.
You are, and you're trying to, talk to people, this, that, and the other. So anybody who like comes up to talk to people or talk to me to meet, I apologize half the time. I'm not totally there. Because you do only have so much of that left. To be able to flip that switch and get into that zone, that's what I think separates the good from the great. That's what separates the people at the top versus the people trying to get there. And then being able to control yourself while you're in that zone, be able to make the technical cues, and like he was talking about with you, the coachable adaptations during the lift in order to be able to technically work your way through the lift instead of just trying to muscle fuck through it. Because that's how injuries happen in my mind, is when people try to start muscle fucking weights that they can't do, or they get out of position and don't know how to readjust and put themselves back into position. Those are all extremely important things, especially when you're talking about, in my world, in multiply, you're out of position by half an inch. You better be able to get yourself back into position, or you're taking a bar to the teeth, or you're folding like a lawn chair. There's nothing in between. And so to be able to make those adjustments on the fly while you're in that zone, that comes from all of your warm-up sets and your working sets, and being able to make those technical adjustments as you go up, so that it's basically second nature. So when you do go into that zone, it auto-regulates yourself, and it kicks in during the lift in order to be able to make those adjustments while you're still in that other space. Your body is just going to adapt. Okay, you shifted back. What do you need to do? You shifted to the left. You get up on your toes. That you starts to feel right. You're falling forward. What do you do? Push your head back. You've got to be able to make those adjustments without even having to think about it. Otherwise, that's not going to end well.
It's going to be fucked up to try to explain, but there's another aspect of all this mindset type of thing, where I worked as a trainer for pretty much 16 years before Elite FTS, different locations, but 8 years in downtown Columbus in one club. And one of my favorite clients was this K guy. He just cracked me up, always funnier than hell. Always showed up, just busted his ass and all this other stuff. And one day we're just talking, because I'm not gay. I don't know anything about being gay.
Yeah.
So like curious,
asking questions. Yeah.
Stupid, curious questions that you'd ask. I'm
Sure.
like how. Like goddamn, he was cracking me up so much about this. This conversation still resonates today. He's like, "Why are you not gay? You should be gay." I'm like, what the hell are you talking
What does that mean?
He's like, you can get laid anytime you want. When's that, and I'm just dying laughing about this. If I want to get laid, I can go do it right now, anytime I want, just right now. And it's just cracking me up. And then I'm like, well, how do you know? Like, how do you know like if we're in a gym now
Yeah.
and there's a bunch of people here, like how do you know who is and who
Yeah,
isn't?
who you can
Right.
hit on and who not.
And he says it's gaydar. Like what the fuck is gaydar? So he's trying to explain to me.
Yeah.
It's like you can just tell.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't tell because you're not gay. I'm like,
Okay, that's
I'm
fair.
so confused. Right?
Yeah.
But what that left me with is I can tell like if somebody's like a true meathead or not.
Yeah.
There's like an aura to it. I don't know what you can tell when they're fake.
Yeah.
Like
Like when people
that.
say they're serious, I'm like, no, you're
You
not.
can
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how.
Yeah.
Like it's like the gaydar, but
Yeah.
it's a meathead radar. Right?
Yeah.
So it's. I was gonna. Do you guys see it? Do you see this? Do you understand
Yeah.
what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so fucking obvious. I mean, it's like, nah, you're not. And you can't say anything.
Yeah.
Because they think they're so serious, but
Yeah.
flat out that. And maybe we're wrong, maybe we're not. Who knows? But it's funnier in hell because when I think of that, that's kind of the first thing I'm looking at. Because okay, is that there?
Yeah.
Because if that's not there, then these other conversations really aren't going to make that much different, or they're different because they're training for different reasons.
Sure.
So it's a different conversation. You can't have those conversations about, their friends might not support or family may not understand and all that because they're never going to grasp that.
Yeah.
Because it's just this different or whatever it is, radar or energy. Maybe Douglas Heel knows or one of those, Meridian type people understand. I don't freaking know. I just know it's there,
Yeah.
and it's a weird ass thing. I'm trying to figure out how to word this question because it's not like a beginner question, but, and I hate to ask those questions, like if you could go back and start the sport over, what did you not expect when you got into powerlifting? So we'll start, you're fresher to the whole thing.
As a female, I think it's a lot different than being a male powerlifter, just because, like, you just either have people who are really into fit chicks and it's like an obsession. So you don't like realize that you're going to have to deal with creepy men like hitting on you or that. Or you just have like the stares like all the time. Like it's just stares over and over again. But like the biggest thing going into it, like I always was like, oh, I'm going to do powerlifting instead of bodybuilding because I like food way too much. So like my first 2 years, I never like worried about my diet. And I think like everything else was good. Like I always made sure like recovery was on point. My sleep, it was minimum 10 hours a night. Like everything was okay. And then when I hired my coach, Tom, and he was kind of like asking me diet questions because like at the time I was sitting at like 155 cutting to 132, and that's not healthy. Like that takes away a huge strength aspect. No matter how well your refeed is, like you still just cut over 10% of your body weight. And I think it like was a wake-up call when he's like, what do you mean you eat pizza or Chipotle or Taco Bell for every meal? He's like, what would happen if you just took your nutrition as serious as you took your sleep and like getting body work done and everything? And like I now sit at like 140, which is an easy cut, and that's not even like being super strict on my diet. That's still like cheat meals and everything. So like that was the biggest thing for me is like, oh, just because I'm a powerlifter doesn't mean I can eat like shit. Because like I was taught when I started was big is strong. It doesn't matter what kind of big you are, whether it's healthy or not, that's what's going to get you strong. And I mean, I'm 25. My cholesterol was horrible at the time. Like my cholesterol shouldn't be like alarming when you're 22, 23. It's like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, even though I love the sport and I'm going to do almost anything to be the best, I'm not going to jeopardize my health because the sport will end for me. And I don't want to be in a wheelchair when I'm 60 years old because I have failing kidneys or just anything. So that was like the biggest shock for me, I think, was like going from a college athlete, eating basically anything, college food, partying, and then thinking that I can like carry that over into powerlifting and be able to like make money and like get good at the sport. So that was like my biggest thing for me.
For me, things I did not expect coming into the sport. I think the biggest thing that I did not expect was the impact it'd have on my life, the direction that it changed, everything that I did, and the life lessons I've learned under the bar. That I never expected. I thought it was cool, lift weights, etc., etc. But powerlifting more than changed the direction of my life from just a lifting standpoint. It developed the mentality that I needed to do the things that I needed to do in my life. I think that was the biggest thing because I started at such a young age. There's a lot of people who knock lifting at a young age. And I think if done correctly, I'm all for it. I mean, being a coach at the spot, I dealt with kids that were 6, 7 years old. Now, we're not loading them up with barbells, but teaching them how to move, teaching them how to strain, teaching them how to persevere, focus, all of this, so many different things that come with training and coming out under the bar. It did ultimately change my entire life. I'm not going to lie. I was a little shit in high school. I was an absolute little shit doing stupid stuff. And the lifting was the one constant thing that I constantly had in life. And it completely changed my perspective and gave me the tools to be able to go, like, you know, run on no sleep for 4 days, which is the best thing for my lifting? No. But what I did was I learned how to push through and strain, and I figured out how to struggle, etc., and push through that struggle. I knew I was going to be fine because I just pushed through whatever, 600-pound squat. I can do this. I'll be fine. I can stay up all night and go work 3 jobs in order to do what I need to do and then get up and study for an exam and go take the test. Whatever I needed to do. The life lessons learned under the bar is by far the biggest thing that I did not expect when I got into the sport, 110%, because it ultimately has shaped me into who I am, and I'm only 27, so to be a head superintendent at a private country club at 27, to done the things that I've done, to own a house, to be where I'm at in life would not be possible without powerlifting. I'd probably be dead. I mean, I've already died once, but that's a whole nother thing. I probably would not have come back because I wouldn't have been strong enough to come back from the dead. That's where I'll put that. It's one of those things where it's definitely shaped my entire outcome. And as much as pushback as I get from friends and from family, the one thing that I think has shifted over the years is the family and the people who are close to me, because as much pushback as I got early on for it, they've seen how it shaped me as a person and how it's changed who I am and how it's changed my entire lifestyle. And they much more advocate for me to continue doing it and help me to do these things. You know, the first people at the hospital, things along those lines, it's always the people who are going to be closest to you, as I've found. And it's one of those things where those are the people who are truly supporting you, and the people who come and show up to meets. I mean, I don't compete local. In case people didn't know, I travel all over the world, all over the country. That's what I choose to do. I use it. I think that's important for people, and that's a whole nother conversation. But the people who come and make the trips, that come to meets, to come support me when I'm across the country or across the globe, the handlers that fly with me, those people like that, I would never have those relationships either. But at the same time, it's those same trips and those same experiences that have ultimately changed who I am. And I think that was the biggest thing I did not expect coming into the sport.
One of the questions that every time I do an AMA, or not an AMA, because those are the stupid Friday things that I do that I'm just, answering. I try to answer. Now I'm trying to answer every question no matter what it is, right? Just because some of them are just funny to answer. Yeah. But when I do shout outs for, I'm going to do a podcast, what I get asked a lot is, where do I see the future of powerlifting going? And a lot of my answer is, it's not up to me. It's up to the lifters. I'm done with the sport. I have my thoughts, and I expressed them on the last podcast, putting a lot of the accountability on federations and stuff like that. But I always put it back on the lifters, because ultimately the lifters decide where the sport's going to go. I don't know if the lifters completely understand that they decide where the sport's going to go, but they do. So I'm going to throw that question back on you guys. Like, where do you see the sport of powerlifting going? Because I got a couple questions with that. So we'll just stay with, where do you see the sport going?
I think, so the raw side of the sport, because obviously I'm not a geared lifter, it's interesting right now because you have your normal structure of lifting, where it's just you go to a meet, and then you have your big money meets, and the best lifter wins by dots, and now it's part of the sport. The raw side is now trying to do these pro series, which makes it very difficult, and it literally changes the sport, because you have, whether you agree with the pro series or you don't agree with the pro series, you're requiring athletes to compete in 4 or 5 meets a year in order to compete at the Super Bowl of raw lifting. So that completely changes it, because, how are you supposed to hit your very best total at 5 meets a year? Now, whether you actually compete at that or not is completely different. But it's now putting people in the spotlight who normally wouldn't. Because, I mean, if you have just an average lifter, just an elite total, competing at 5 meets a year, they don't even have to do their very best. They're going to end up winning overall because you have the athletes who are at the top who know that they can't do more than 2 meets a year because of risk of injury, or they just don't want to be on a cycle that long, or they don't want to just like feel like shit all year round, who are not going to like participate in that. So it's different, and I think that this year is going to play like a huge role because this is like the first major year where it's like all this is set in stone, and you have some top athletes who are like, oh, I'm going to do all 5 of these meets, but then you have athletes who are like, fuck that, I'm doing 1 meet and I don't care if I'm part of this series. But it also causes like a lot of drama in the sport, and I think right now athletes are more caught up in the drama instead of just lifting to like be strong. Like, I think back when you were lifting, it was we just lifted to be fucking strong.
Well, that kind of falls back to what I was saying. There's always been drama.
Yeah.
Always been drama, and it's the solution to the drama. Let's pause for a minute and say, where's the drama being created?
Yeah.
Federations, accountability.
Yeah, exactly. Whether records should be counted, whether bars are being allowed to use, and all that.
Yes. So that goes back to, my rant from the last podcast that I did is, the athletes somehow or another, I don't want to say need to form a union, but the federations should use the athletes as sounding boards on where to move the sport forward. And I with what you're saying, I have a hard time thinking that any top strength athlete would say, hey, 4 meets a year is a good idea. So
it's athletes being like, hey, I'm going to do these 4 meets a year. I'm going to make 10 grand at each meet. I don't care if I PR my total or not. We're like, to me, I'm like, yeah, money's great if you go win a meet and everything, but it's like, I don't want 10 grand if I just shit the bed.
Yes.
But that's like, not every lifter is going to think that. So you have top athletes with 2 totally different mindset, and it's like, okay, well, what's important to them? Is it the money, or is it having the best total and being the best athlete?
Yes. And what will ultimately happen,
the
history of the sport very, very well, another federation will form.
Exactly.
And that's why we end up with, actually there might be fewer federations today than say 10 years ago, but give it another 5 years and they're going to be double again, because somebody's going to say, fuck that, I don't like that. And
the drama's going to unfold, and they're going to be like, well, I'm not going to give you my money, I'll just start my own federation.
Yes, and that kind of where it all goes back to, where as lifters, having those long range plans. Here's the objective, what's the main objective? Okay, my main objective is world record. My main objective is top 10 or whatever it's going to be. What's that personal main objective? And I think that the only thing lifters can really do, while all that drama is always been created with every federation, is focus on what's most important to them.
Yeah.
Rank, total, whatever it's going to be. Where you start to get a little fucked up is when you start saying, I want that to be winning X meet.
Yeah.
Because X meet may be great now, but 3 years from now...
Of doing 5 meets a year, how are you going to...
Well, 3 years from now, the credibility of that meet could be fucking shot, too.
Yeah.
Just bad judging or, whatever it's going to be. Or the meet director just quits putting on meets.
Yeah.
The title moves to somebody else. So it's that personally kind of happened to me. I always wanted to be a national champion. That's all what I wanted was nationals, qualify for worlds. I personally never thought I was ever going to be good enough to win worlds, but just get me there.
Yeah.
Right? That's all I wanted to do. And then drama, as I'm training at Westside, unfolds, and there's IPA and there's APF, and then Louis decided to go IPA. He's the guy I'm training under, mentor, all this other stuff. I'm going to go where he wanted to go. Well, IPA, I win the nationals. I'm like, fuck yeah, I won the nationals, but their worlds has no countries.
Yeah.
6 states.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, this isn't.
Drives me nuts.
It's like, to me, it wasn't. Yeah, I won it, but no, I didn't.
Yeah.
That's not really it.
No.
Right. So that's the kind of shit that happens where the focus. I always had the focus on top 10 and all that, but if I could go back and change any of those things, it wouldn't have been X title.
Yeah.
Like, who the fuck would have ever thought that they were going to end up being? Because when I came into the sport, it was the United States Powerlifting Federation. That was it.
Yeah.
And there was AAU or something like that. That was it. But then they started to implement drug testing. right? And then that's what split the APF and then the ADFPA.
Yep.
And then here goes that line, you know, and it's like, okay, well, I can't compete in this because I don't abide by those rules. I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to go here. And it's like, okay, that's the APF, and that's kind of then it's like APF, IPA, and here we go, and then all of a sudden it diluted, you know, what that was.
Sure.
You know, you go back to, you know, and I'm not one of these guys that say it should all go back to like it was before, but you go back to when it was just that one, you know, say when Ed Cohn and some of these guys were winning world championships, there was basically one federation, you know, and it was all under the umbrella, I believe, of the IPF back then. And there were like 30 people in the world that were all fucking strong.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
You know, and it was treated a little bit like the Olympics. They carried a flag in, and that's what I grew up looking at. Like, how fucking awesome would that be?
Oh yeah.
You know,
Like
to
on
be
the
able to
raw
have
side.
to travel somewhere and this. And I didn't find out till later they had to pay their own expenses and all the other things that are associated with that. But at the time, that was that aspirational goal.
Sure.
So I'll flip that same thing.
I'm trying to figure out how I want to answer this because I could go this a lot of different ways. I'll just take it from this approach because from my perspective, obviously being a multiply lifter, it's a little bit different. However, I do feel like the sport is heading in a very unique direction. Multiply is currently expanding. They have this new unlimited class. I haven't ventured down that road yet, but we'll see how this kind of takes off. Once again, it'll ultimately be decided by the lifter. I go back and look at history. So everything started out raw, essentially, right? Then they slowly allowed wraps that came in, and then the evolution of gear developed, things going through. The purpose of powerlifting, you got to look at that. At the end of the day is to move the most weight that you possibly can, right? And you based off of weight classes and coefficients. I think that's essentially why the sport was created. You're moving as much weight as you can pound for pound. That's what you create a total.
Yep.
That's where you get the coefficient based off the total and the body weight, and coefficients when meets,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of, at the end of the day, what you're looking for. When you look back at history, and I've been fortunate enough to go back, look Powerlifting USA, see some of these old videos, all these guys were absolutely freaking jacked. Like, you're talking about the worlds. I mean,
Yeah.
they were not just strong. I mean, they were jacked and strong. Why? Because they were making massive weight cuts, typically down, cutting 20, 30 pounds, making a weight
24
class.
hours. There was not 24-hour weigh-ins.
Exactly.
Either.
You're talking 2-hour
weigh-ins.
weigh-ins. I mean, they're
Yeah.
still trying to rehydrate. They're pulling the IV out of their arm as they're walking up to the platform. I mean, that's just the reality of the
Yeah.
matter. And when they did implement 24-hour weigh-ins, that kind of changed the game a little bit in that regard. But even then, these guys were still absolute monsters. We got away from that in the sport for a little bit. Things kind of shifted. Multiply kind of took over. Gear kind of went crazy. And they're starting to rein it back in. Now, I'm on the side, in my opinion, I love the multiply side, as obviously I compete there for a lot of reasons, which that's a whole nother thing. But the biggest thing with where the sport's going, to continue answering the question, with what Raw is doing from a multiply guy, I'm loving this. Because all they're going to do is they're going to fry out all of the
Raw
medium-
lifters
they're
that
gonna
have to
get
go to
smoked.
equipped if they want to continue
That's
lifting.
it. That's the reality of the matter. Is what these pro series are going to do is either force the really good raw lifters to go multiply and come compete for money on the multiply side, or if they're going to keep trying to do this 4 or 5 meets a year thing, they're going to be smoked. Within 2 to 3 years, just like they have been, but it's gotten a little bit better, they're going to be done. In my opinion, you can't be a great lifter in the history of the sport if you only competed for 3 freaking years.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Get the heck out of here. Also, if you've only competed in your own state.
Yeah.
Get out of here. There's no freaking way. I will take that one to the grave and fight anybody on that one. If you've only been in the sport 3 years and you've never competed outside of your home state or outside of your gym,
Completely different than flying across the country and
Yeah.
dealing with
Yes.
all the time
Or
change.
just being in front of different judges.
Yeah.
That too. And being on a different monolift, on a different platform, different warm-up room, different environment, different bed when you're sleeping the night before, not having access to supplies. Go to
Yeah.
a different country where they don't speak the same language as you and try to find a sauna in a freaking another country so
Yeah.
you can sweat. Good luck with that one. Have a diet change. I mean, when I flew to Finland, I had a whole extra suitcase full of food and a hot plate that I could plug
Yeah.
in to make sure that I could still eat and reload because I didn't know what I was going to be able to find. You got no idea.
Yeah.
These are the things that, in my opinion, separate the good from the great. And what they're doing, in my opinion, in raw lifting, I'm not a raw lifter, so take it for what it's worth, but I've been around the sport for over a decade. I've seen a lot of these shifts happen, and I'm starting to see it swing back the multiply direction simply because all the top lifters are either going to fry themselves out or have to make a change.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing. And if you look at the history of this, we're in a weird spot because powerlifting's only been really around for the last 50 years. And if you watch the swing, it went from nothing, more gear, more gear, more gear. Okay, split, boom, now you got multiply and equipped. Raw kind of took off, multiply fizzled out. People are like, we can't train in groups. It's way too hard. There's a whole other aspect. So raw, anybody can do it. Cool, let's go ahead and do this. Then now you've got these elite, I call it the elite Ross, people who are just on a whole nother category. And now you're going to try to make them compete 4 to 5 times a year? No freaking way.
It changes the sport. It changes the entire plan, like how you're going to peak. It literally changes everything.
You're not going to be able to peak. The numbers are going to suffer. The people are going to suffer. And ultimately, the lifters are going to suffer. Because the irony in all this, which you're talking about the federations, the ding-dongs who are making these calls about who are creating these series and all this, people who've never been at the top, or if they were there for a year or two. Like, come on now.
It's mostly people who just have money and want to be a part of something.
Bingo.
Yeah. See, personally, I like all the different divisions because we've seen that. I mean, I'm sure there's people who are going to disagree with me. We've seen that had a great positive effect on bodybuilding.
Yeah.
But the money should go, some of it should go to the athletes, not just to the show promoters.
Yeah.
But you have all the different divisions, you bring in a lot more entry fees, a lot more money, which should create a lot more prize money for the lifters. Now, do the divisions need to be in their own federations and meets? I don't think so. I think it could kind of be the same way as like the top meet should have, here's the multiply, here's the single ply, here's the raw, whatever it's going to be, over a 3-day spread. Because what I've noticed is you can see the drama that's online, the multiply and the raw, the back, all that kind of stuff. Put them in the same gym, let them all train together.
Oh, I love that. Let's do it.
Well, no, you're doing it now.
Well,
I mean, they're supportive. They're always supportive of each other.
Right.
The drama is only the people that are stirring shit up online that really are just doing it to stir shit up online.
Or the people creating federations in like these series that are trying to change the game, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's the other. I agree with you. Well, think capitalism, right? So
Well,
the more
that.
competition, right? It's going to drive, and ultimately, what's going to end up coming through is going to be what people are going to want to do, and what's going to be the competition breeds success, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I agree with you on the competing in different places and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I also think that there should be a judging standard held at least at a national level.
Yes.
So it.
Well, that's the hard part. Is like a lot of on the raw side, a lot of these national or even international judges are judges from like your time when you were competing. Standards from like your time are completely different, like from now. So like you have judges who are literally making you like long pause 4 seconds on your chest because they think that they're gonna be fucking awesome because they long pause so and so, and it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, see, it's like I don't give a fuck what happened. Well, let me backtrack this. I don't give a shit what happens like at local levels and stuff like that. Now, at a state level, there should be standard. Anytime there's like a state record being broken, it should be a standard.
Agreed.
If a national record shouldn't be able to be broken unless it's in front of national judges. That's how I came up.
I agree, yeah.
1,000%
it just shouldn't be that way. So that way the standard's held. Yes, there's always going to be loose judging and local meets here and there.
Like all-time world records.
But usually those guys or women, they don't make it on the national platform.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what happens.
Yes, because they can't pass the lifts or whatever it is, and that standard's there. But where I have the issues is when national and world records or whatever can be broken
at any
and not in front of national or world judges. That's fucked up.
It is.
All time shouldn't be counted either. It can be an unofficial. I used to see unofficial state record, unofficial.
That's what they used
national
to do.
record.
They need to go back.
And that kept that with an asterisk, which is. It's great, but get the dude in front of a national platform where there's going to be consistency. That to me, those things would be to seem like they'd be simple to implement.
Well, the issue now is like if an all-time world record passes and you confront that president federation, they're like, "Well, talk to Open Powerlifting. They're the one who keeps all the records."
But who sanctions the meets?
Exactly. So it's like, okay, you have the presidents of these federations who should be the ones who are like, oh, this is an all-time world record. This isn't. It shouldn't be. Nothing against Over Powerlifting. Like, kudos to them for putting all these records and all these meets on one platform. But it's like, who are they to judge whether an all-time world record should be approved or taken away?
Well, they don't.
Well, there's a database.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What it is,
Exactly.
It's the same thing with our government. There's a lack of accountability the higher up the chain you go.
Yeah.
Right? So they just pass the buck. Like, oh, no, it wasn't me. Blame a database.
Yeah.
like, you can't blame the database.
No.
Like, how are they supposed to? They're seriously supposed to review every video of
Yeah.
everything that comes in there?
There's no way.
Well, then it's like, okay, well, are they even like, I guess, certified as like a judge to like,
Well,
you
it's
know what
a
I mean?
video.
That's like assuming like, hey, like I know what I'm talking about, like I know the criteria, and it's like most of these dudes don't. Like the people who are running it are just another average lifter who are just passionate about the sport and want to do something.
Yeah, but you see how they're passing the buck because they're saying we'll talk to open powerlifting.
Yeah.
They weren't sitting in the 3 chairs that judged the event.
Exactly.
Those people's opinions are the only ones that matter because they were there.
Yeah.
And that's the generation, because, you know, when I competed, you didn't want to squat 1 inch lower than you had to. You wanted it to be right there. Hell, if you got a red from the front, that's even better, you know, because why waste more energy?
Yeah.
You don't need to be convincingly deep. So that accountability is really on those 3 people, but they don't want to take the accountability, right? Because they never get called out, nor
They think if they red light a top lifter that they're going to get backlash.
well, they
And
get
it's
caught
like,
up in the moment, and stuff like that too. But then that accountability goes to the meet director, and the meet director was not me, it's them.
Yeah.
Right. But ultimately, it's the meet director. Always moves up.
Yeah.
You know, to the federation, but now the federation's found their scapegoat.
Yes.
You know, open powerlifting.
Yeah.
And that was my rant last time. Is the ultimate responsibility and accountability falls on the federation. As it should fall on our government officials and everything else, but it never does.
No.
But who does it end up always coming down on? The lifter.
Well,
Yeah.
always.
And that's bullshit.
I agree.
You know, the lifter shouldn't have to pay the price and all the criticism and all this other stuff for the lack of accountability of 3 people in a chair, the person running the meet, the regional director, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they do. You know, and that's where I get frustrated as the outsider looking in. Like, yes, you can sit there and criticize that lift and all the other kind of stuff, but the real answer, the lifters getting together saying, hey, look, dickheads, quit putting these people in the chair that shouldn't be judging these things.
Yeah.
You know, or very simply, you know, go back to unofficial.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, from a lifter standpoint, you know, where you pay your entry fees is where you support. So that's extremely important. And for me, that's why I've stuck with the same federation or same group of feds, because that's what I support. I support what they're about. They've been around for over 35 years. They're connected with 42 other countries. They're the second longest standing federation that's out there. And I'm 100% on board with you with the national and the world records need to be broken at national and world level meets. But when you've got backyard meets being, you know, national meets where there's 3 different types of benches in the warm-up room, squat racks that don't have any type of mono jacks in the back, and you've got to push it. Like, this is not a national level meet. This is a world level meet, which once again, you as the lifter are the one who chose to go there, though. You're the one who chose to compete in that federation. So I guess my call is on the lifters to go to the federations that take care of you. Just like at any organization, the owner takes care of the management takes care of the employee takes care of the client takes care of the owner. It's the same exact thing. President of the organization, then you have what would be the meet director takes care of the officials take care of the lifters take care of the organization by supporting that organization. That's how it should work. And as a lifter, you're responsible. If you go to these state local meets to go try to get a one-off quarter squat, high squat passed, or a non-locked out deadlift, and that's what you want to do is go put up these numbers in these backyard meets, good for you. But don't think that you're on the same level as these other guys who've been doing this for a decade, in my opinion, who do travel and do go to Worlds and do go to these high-level meets that are strictly judged and held to a standard of any sort, putting up those type of numbers. It is not the same thing. And that's what drives me nuts, is they're 2 different things. It happens in Raw, it happens in Multiply, it happens regardless of the subgenre that you lift in, which I support all the subgenres, just to be clear. Just because I lift Multiply doesn't mean I hate Raw, by no means, obviously, right? So I have the utmost respect for all the subgenres, but it is what happens at these backyard meets, at these unofficial meets, that a lot of times these federations are spun off of by people who went to national and world level meets and bombed out multiple times, and they just didn't like the fact that they couldn't squat deep enough, so they're going to go create their own federation. It's like, really? Like, that's really how we're going to do this. And then but as somebody who does that, every time you pull lifters out of that federation to come lift at yours, you're, in my opinion, hurting the integrity of the sport for multiple facets, because you're pulling money out of the pockets of the people who are doing it the right way. And then, once again, it does come back down to lifter. You do choose where you get to lift. You choose where you pay your entry fees. You choose what pages you follow. You choose where you spend your money when you're buying equipment and gear. Same thing with why I've been supportive of Elite FTS for 15 years, since I've started lifting. I came out here the second week that I ever went powerlifting, that I've ever been powerlifting. The guy that I trained with brought me out there, whatever it was, the S3 compound. It was one of the first spots, and I remember I know exactly when it was because it was Rhonda's second day. That's how I know. And it was her second day, and she was so happy to go show me everything she just learned about the warehouse and walk everything through. But it's because of the people that were here, and a lot of it did have to do with Rhonda that first day, I'll be quite honest with you. And it's been sticking to the brand and sticking to Elite since then, because once again, it's where you spend your money is what you're supporting. If you're supporting these other companies that are absolutely doing garbage things or being shady about what they do or not supporting the lifters back, just think about that for a second. Why do you want to continue to buy product from somebody who's not supporting lifters and not taking care of lifters on the back end? That's extremely important. And that's where the same thing goes with the federation that you choose. I mean, it's the same thing happens to government, society. You can keep going down this line everywhere you go.
It'd be interesting to see because I'm not paying that close of attention, but I mean, powerlifting went through a rapid growth phase.
Oh yeah, massive.
Rapid growth phase to where, I mean, women were a very, very small minority. They actually may be the majority now. They may be over. It's close. We'll put it that way.
Sure.
Last I checked, it was really, really close. And that was a few years ago. So it may be over the majority, but at some point in time, it will start, to taper down.
Sure.
Now, when it tapers down, that's less customers, less, you know what I'm saying? So that while it's in that rapid growth phase, I don't think dollars matter, right? Because people are signing up for meets all over the place.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really matter. They're going to go everywhere. And they don't know any different.
That's the thing.
They don't know. Oh, meets, they're normally held in gyms. Yeah, okay, cool. They don't know. That's all they've ever known. When that starts to come down that downslide, and I'm not saying it's going to come back to where it was by any stretch. It's going to still stay, way higher than what it was. But it is going to go down.
It will.
It's definitely going to go down. And when that happens, that's going to start to impact. Then the voters, I think, are going to have, or the lifters will have more say in where they lift, because now every lifter during their growth phase, while I think every customer matters, if you're in a hyper growth phase, the argument can be made that they really don't.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing with lifters and powerlifters. You're in a hyper growth phase, whatever. You want to leave, so what? I got 10 other people that want your spot.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Take that away.
Oh,
now you're going to leave, but you got 10 friends leaving with them? Fuck. Wherever Westside decided to compete, it usually made a big difference on whatever that federation was, not just because of the 25 people there, but the other 75 that were probably going to go tagged along with that, where there's still batches of people now that are out there that have that impact, where when the hyper growth phase, you don't feel it. This year, next year, sometime, it's going to start being felt.
Sure.
Then some of the federations will have to adjust, especially when you're talking the top ones, money meets. I mean, the one thing about the money meets and the top ones, you need lifters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have no show without lifters.
Yeah.
Right. And if you got 10 lifters, that's not a very good show.
No.
Now, if you got 10 lifters that aren't even ranked in the top 10, for the year, that's a shitty show.
What it's interesting this year, like on the Raw side, is literally from September to December of this year, you have 8 money meets that are over 40 grand of cash prize. There's only so many top lifters. So it's like, okay, you have all these top meets, but it's like, who are you going to get to fill these top meets when there's only a handful of lifters? Mm-hmm. So it's like now, not saying that other people don't deserve money. Like, I'm sure they've put in the work too, but it's like, you're giving average lifters 40 grand.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So now it's the whole thing from like now colleges are giving powerlifters like scholarship, full rides. Like that plays a huge role because now these kids are graduating and it's like, okay, are they going to stay USAPL or are they going to move on to like the drug tested side? But it's like then you have these college athletes who are being pampered at these college meets. Mm-hmm. And then they go into the open side, and it's like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, I shouldn't be a college athlete that I make zero money, and then I go into this meet, and it's like in a backyard where I'm going to get some infection.
Oh yeah, no,
You know what I
it's
mean?
crazy.
Like-
I mean, Wendler tells a story where Louie and him were like going back and forth and talking shit or whatever it was, and Jim said, Louie, you got to understand, I played in a stadium with 60,000 people watching. That's more people than have ever seen you lift.
Yeah.
And all the meets that you've ever competed
Yeah.
in. it's not a lie, but it is. It's a shift, man, because they're used to that. And then it's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Like, there's no water in the warm-up room. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
We had like food and all kinds of shit. So any parting thoughts as we close this podcast down?
You got anything?
No, I don't got anything.
I don't think so.
All right, that makes it easy. We are done. Thanks, guys. That's a wrap.